delusion, and you're why we lose. James Lindsay spinning tails, got a fantasy in play, pocketing that cash while he's leading minds astray. Milfs for liberty, he's cashing in the bucks, but his logic's out of whack, man, it's all just muck. Left hates capitalism, he's blind to the facts. Queer theories misunderstood, it's a different attack. Destabilizing norms, breaking down the walls, but James blocks the truth, man, he's lost in the halls. Piper James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, it's a bubble of deceit. While he's pocketing the green, we're exposing the cheat. Leonardi drops the mask with a bang. Where liberation means capitalism, that's the goal. Stop blocking the truth, James, open up your eyes. Our theories misunderstood, capitalism's a pride. Destroying the old norms, shaking up the scene. Face up to reality, stop the serial line. James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, a bullet now. Whiteness, capitalism, it's all intertwined. Queer theory's the lens, but you're way behind. Liberation means capitalism's gone. Jump, change, face, hurry up. The lies will cost us the war, that's the price. No property, no house, no business, no money, no parents, no rights, no lives for us all. Socialist reality built on your lies. Piper James, great deceiver. Parents follow your advice, kids pay the price. Piper James, great deceiver. You hold up the curtains and cover the mess you've begun. Piper James, great deceiver. Your life to millions, know why we lose. Piper James, great deceiver. You're living delusion and you're why we lose. James won't admit it, he refuses to believe queer theory destabilizes normativity. Gender binary in the nuclear family. James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him. Creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. He used to believe in something, what happened? Mills for liberty. Gnostic sex cult, building his own world. A Gnostic sex cult, unhinged from reality. He's totally lost in what can we do? But mock him relentlessly. It's not a Gnostic sex cult, James. No, it's not. Stop lying to your audience. No, it's not. It's not Gnostic, James. Mary Nardini tells us queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. Catch up, James. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. Whoa. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, change. It's capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, change. It's capitalism. It's capitalism. To pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory stabilizes normativity, the gender binary, and the nuclear family. But James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. Is to believe in something. What happens for liberty? Gnostic sex cult believe some world. The Gnostic sex cult unhinged from reality. He's totally lost it. What can we do but mock him relentlessly?
So I had a call with some of my community members earlier for our community like Zoom supporter call, and one of them came and told this story, and she has been trying to tell her friends about all of this crazy stuff that's going on. And of course, one of the things we know is that when people are not ready to listen to what is going on the left, like there's nothing you can say. If people are not ready to hear about what's going on in the schools, if people aren't ready to process all of the crazy stuff in the world coming from the same place, there's like just literally nothing that you can say to get them to listen. And so you have to be patient. You have to be patient and wait for people to come along, and you have to plant little nuggets of information, and you have to hope that someday it marinates and that they eventually come to you and they want to learn what's going on. And so this actually happened to the community member on the call earlier, and she said, you know, one of my friends came to me, and I've been trying to tell her about what's going on in the schools, and she came to me and she said, my son has 3 kids in it. My son's class has 3 kids in it. They used to be boys last year, and now those boys are identifying as girls. And my son is in trouble because he doesn't want to sit next to one of them because one of them took out his bits and started masturbating in the bathroom in front of everyone. And the school wants to talk to me because my son doesn't want to sit next to that person, and my son is getting in trouble for it. And I'm really confused about all this crazy stuff that's going on. And so my community member, she did such a good job. And they went out for tea. And she said, here's what's going on. All of this crazy stuff, from drag queens to gender to all of this, there are people in the world that are trying to teach kids that gender is fluid, that gender is a performance, that you can change your gender as easily as you're changing an outfit. And that's why they're doing all this drag queen stuff. And that's why you have all these kids that are suddenly deciding they're a different gender. And that's why you have the schools protecting the kids that are deciding that they're a different gender, rather than protecting everyone from having to see kids taking their bits out and masturbating in the bathroom. And so then her friend was like, well, why would they do that though? And so then my community member was like, okay, hang on. you have to understand that there are people in the world who want to abolish capitalism. And they believe that the gender binary was created by capitalism, and that if they can teach everyone in the world that gender is a performance, that will lead to the abolition of capitalism and the nuclear family and all children being born via surrogacy. And it sounds crazy when you say it that way. It sounds crazy when you say it that way. We sound like conspiracy theorists. We sound it was just a great reminder to me that to normal people that don't sit around watching socialism all day, every day, it does sound a little crazy. It sounds a little unhinged, and I say it all the time. Like, I feel like I've never felt like more of a conspiracy theorist in my life, but I'm also absolutely convinced that I'm 100% right. We come across like Alex Jones. We sound like conspiracy theorists. Yep, it sounds crazy. It does. It sounds crazy. Reality is stranger than fiction. We sound like we're saying that they're turning the frogs gay or something. Yep. We're conspiracy theorists. We're conspiracy theorists. But the reason we say that is because we've heard them say it. We have heard them say it over and over and over again. Nick, thank you for the first super chat of the day. One day the normies might put on the sunglasses. Yeah, that's really all we can hope for, isn't it? That's really all we can hope for. And you know what? Like, it really was a nice reminder. It was a nice reminder that, well, we have a lot of work to do. And that we need to really make sure that we're approaching people with this information in a way that they're going to be receptive, that they can process it. Now, we shouldn't sugarcoat it. We should make it as easy to understand as we possibly can, but we also need to be providing evidence. We need to be providing receipts. We need to be providing backup so that when they say, that sounds crazy, we go, yeah, we know. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy. I know you think I'm a lunatic. I know, but it's real. It's real, and we've heard them say it. And this is why I do what I do. This is why I do what I do. With this show and with my Substack, which you can access at Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Because currently on the Substack right now, if people are doubtful that they do actually want to have all children born via surrogacy, right now on the homepage of my Substack, you can find a paper that was written by a Harvard master's student, a Harvard University master's student in the Kennedy School of Government, which literally states in the paper, and it was published on the Student Policy Review website of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. You can find the link over on the Substack. This paper literally states, transhumanism, the idea of overcoming biological limitations with sophisticated technology, envisions a world where medical technology advances to achieve universal fertilization and for fetuses to develop outside of wombs, completely decoupling gender and reproductive labor. Modern fertility technology already allows for some decoupling, but gendered reproductive labor divisions and biological limitations remain significant. If they don't want all kids born via surrogacy, then what's that about? Why are we decoupling gender from having children? oh, wait, it's because they want to abolish the gender binary. The gender binary means men and women. The reason they want to abolish the gender binary is because they believe that capitalism created the gender binary, which again just means men and women. It put men in the workplace where they have all access to all the power and all the money. It put women in the home where they did the unpaid and undervalued work of raising the next generation of proletarian workers to continue the oppression of capitalism through social reproduction theory, which just means that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. And the reason that they want to destroy the biological nuclear family is because they believe that the nuclear family is the literal means of reproduction of capitalism, which they define as private property ownership, which is their number one enemy in all of the world. And that is what they want to do in this country. They want to overthrow private property ownership, which means your ability to own a home, own land, own an apartment that you rent out as a landlord, own intellectual property, own a business, whether that business is big or small. Your parental rights are considered to be a form of private property. Your individual liberties are considered to be a form of private property. And they want all that gone. And that's why they want to destroy gender by teaching kids that gender is a performance. That is why they want to destroy the nuclear family, because they believe it is the literal means of reproduction of capitalism. And if they just destroy the nuclear family, they get their Marxist utopia, and that is what is going on. And we might sound crazy when we say it, but then we find Harvard master's students in the Kennedy School of Government saying that all children should be born outside the womb. I know they think we're all crazy. I get it. I know they think we're crazy. But we're not crazy. And we have mountains of receipts to back up every single thing that we say. And now it is our job. It is incumbent upon us, because no one else is doing this, to gently and carefully and pragmatically deliver this information to people who want to understand why the world has gone crazy. And we need to be there for them. We need them to go through the same process that many of us have gone through, where there is a mourning period. We need them to take this journey with us. And that is what we're doing here. And that is what I'm doing 6 days a week, streaming with you guys. And you know what we're going to do today? Actually, let me talk about this first. And this is why I'm creating a new resource for you. It's not exactly a new resource. I've been doing the re-education series over on my Substack, which the re-education series is basically, if you go to the Woke 101 section of my Substack, it is right at the top. And it is basically where I am breaking down all of the core concepts that you need to know about what the left is doing in really short posts that are really easy to understand, because everyone needs to learn this from scratch. We all need to learn it so that we can teach it to other people. However, I'm taking it to the next level. I have now figured out a way to harness AI to do things that were taking up so much of my time that it's ridiculous. AI is about to be the biggest game changer that I've ever experienced in my life. I poo-pooed it for a long time. Of course, I did AI art and I liked AI art and I dabble in AI music. But in terms of like using AI to enhance my productivity, I really poo-pooed it for a long time because I was like, what I do is so specialized. AI is not going to be able to catch up. But the AI is working for me now. And because the AI is working for me now, I am building off of this re-education series. And over the course of the next month, and by next month, I mean through the end of October, because we're still in September. I understand that, but I mean through the end of October. I am going to be putting together a book that I hope to have out before the end of the year. That is the goal. I want to make sure everyone can get a Christmas thing or something. I don't know if this is actually possible. I've never self-published before, but I'm going to be writing the book over the next month. And I've got the whole thing outlined. And I've got it all set up, and now all I need to do is keep my head down and bang out the content. And now I figured out how to utilize, again, AI to bang out content faster. It's not that I'm not writing it. I am writing it, but I'm using the AI to help with components that just makes the process of writing it all the much faster. I don't want anyone to think that I'm writing this using AI like from scratch, because I'm not. It's all coming from up here. It's all being read and proofed and approved by me. But in terms of like different aspects of it, yeah, there's research that needed to be done that is much easier to do with AI. And I just like, I cannot even say enough about how much easier AI is making my life. It is amazing. But anyway, my goal is to get this book out as soon as humanly possible. And I'm calling it Re-Education. It is based on the idea of the Re-Education series. It's not taking the posts directly. It's not doing like a copy and paste with the posts are already available. It's going to be a little bit more built out than that. But this is going to be the definitive anti-communist guide for decoding the left. It's going to be written in plain English. It's going to be short little sections that's all going to be categorized like, what do you need to know, like high level points you need to know about the left. Yes, we all sound crazy, we know that, but just work with us for a minute. What you need to know about capitalism, what you need to know about racism, what do you need to know about gender ideology, disability studies, queer studies, fat studies, environmental justice, land, what you need to know about borders and immigration. Whatever topic the left is using to push their ideas, it is all going to be covered in this book. And what I'm thinking about is this is going to be like a study guide. This is going to be like a study guide that people can use in conjunction with my How to Speak Socialist class. This is where by the way, in my How to Speak Socialist class, you have all the clips available to you, right? Clips from the trainings that we've been watching for 3+ years. This is going to be a study guide for people coming to Socialism Saturday. This is going to be something that we can use when people become interested in this topic, because again, you cannot force this on people before they're ready. But when people become interested in this topic, what we can do is say, here's a resource for you. And I'll help you understand this and I'll help you learn it. And we will go through this process together. And it'll be amazing. And you're going to know what's really going on in the world, and it might be hard, and you might not want to admit it, and you might go through a process of mourning. Because I think many of us have gone through a mourning process in the acquiring of this information. But at the end of the day, you need to face facts that this is what is going on in the world, and this is what is pushing every crazy idea, and this is particularly what is impacting the K-12 public schools. This is what is being taught to your children from the time they're 5 years old in the public schools that are controlled by these people, that are quite literally trying to destroy our entire society, trying to abolish everything that upholds the American dream, and replace it with a society in which we are all part of the collective Borg, and that if you try to go against the socialist revolution, they will literally put you in the re-education camp. And yeah, we literally have them on video saying this. This isn't theoretical. Every single thing that I say on my channel, every single thing that I am writing in this book, it doesn't come from me. It is not my opinion. It is because I have seen them say it on video, and when I say them, I mean radical revolutionary socialist activists that are all over the country right now that are pushing these ideas. We have a massive archive of video of them that no one else in the world has. No one else is anywhere close to the amount of footage that I have of these people. So every single thing that I'm saying comes from video, from their trainings, from their events, from them discussing their ideas, from them teaching their ideas in the real world. I know the difference between what is written in the philosophy and what they're actually doing in the real world, because I don't look at the philosophy. I only watch what they're doing in the real world. Just because someone writes a paper or publishes an article in an academic journal doesn't mean that's what's being taught in the real world, because there's not a direct translation between the two. So if you just go right to the source, if you go to their trainings, which are all online because they make videos of all of them, if you just go to their events, which I've been to in person, by the way, I had to dress up and wear a chest binder and everything to go undercover, you will understand what they're teaching in the real world and what they are not teaching in the real world. And we need to hinge ourselves into reality if we want to start solving this problem, because continuing to just read the philosophy of dead people is not going to solve this problem. Continuing to bicker about all the different people that contributed to this situation, whether it be Marx or Mao or Marcuse or Hegel or Foucault or Horkheimer or Adorno or any of these people That's not actually going to lead to solving the problem, because that is not what is going on in the real world today. We can see this. It is happening right out in the open. All we have to do is look. And I'm going to be distilling down all of the information that we have gained over the past 3 years. This is the moment that all of this has been leading up to write this book. And part of the reason I'm writing this book is because James Lindsay is starting to talk about decoding the language of the left, and I'll be goddamned if I'm going to allow James Lindsay to publish a book before I am decoding the language of the left, because James doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about. So yeah, maybe I'm being a little petty too, but I do actually see an urgent need for it, if for no other reason than if James gets ahead of me on this one, he is the one that is going to be creating the narrative, and James Lindsay has spent years lying to people, and I'm not going to fucking have it. So, when we are presented with situations where we need to step up to the plate and reorganize a schedule that I had already planned to do this book next year, now is the time. I have the tools to do it, and we're all going to come together, and we're going to make sure people know that this resource exists. It's being created right now, and guess what? You don't even have to wait for the book to be published, because I'm actually writing it live on the internet. Okay, maybe not live, but as I finish chapters for this book, as I finish sections for this book, it will go up on my Substack, speaksocialist.substack.com, where when you are a member, which, by the way, members to this site fund this book. When you become a member for $10 a month, $100 for the year, you are funding my ability to write this book. This is separate from my main Substack. It is a standalone product. You don't get it included if you're a member of my main Substack. I'm sorry if that makes people angry, but this is a separate standalone product. And what's going to happen when you sign up for this is you are going to get real-time updates of multiple projects that I'm writing, but it's going to be a heavy focus on this re-education thing for the next month because I just want it done and out. But there are multiple books that I'm writing out of this Substack. And the good benefit of this is that you don't have to wait for it to get published as a real book. You can get the drafts as they are written right now. And so if you want to support the work I'm doing there, head over to speaksocialist.substack.com and make sure you sign up for a membership, and then you will get email updates every time I publish something new. I'm also publishing audio versions of the book. So if you want to get the audio version, I haven't gotten all the chapters read in audio versions yet, but I'm doing a lot of them. So if you want to get the audio version, that will also be available as a members-only podcast over on that Substack. And we all need to come together, guys. We all need to learn this information. We all need to get this information out there. I will show up for you as long as you show up for me. And I know I have some super chats. I know people have been showing up for me in the super chats already, which, of course, I really do appreciate. I will always show up for you guys as long as you guys show up for me, okay? But this is important. We are pretty much effed. And the only way we can un-F this situation is by coming together and teaching as many people as possible what is going on the left. So head over to speaksocialist.substack.com, sign up for updates as I write the re-education book, which will hopefully be done by the end of the month, and then I hopefully will be able to get it out relatively quickly after that. You can also head over to my main Substack, where you can actually access the re-education series that I'm writing over there. Again, this is not going to be the exact content that's in the book, but they are quick hits of information that you can give to your friends. Here, you want to understand what decolonization means? Here's what this means. You want to understand how queer is different from trans? Here's what this means. These are quick hits of information that allow other people to understand what's going on in plain English, because we need more people understanding what is going on. Well, the re-education book is going to be the definitive anti-communist guide to decoding the left, and that I'm like, fingers crossed, by the end of the year, fingers crossed, we'll see how it goes. It will minimally, here's the thing, I don't know, I've never done self-publishing before, so I don't know what's required to actually get it up on Amazon and like as a print-on-demand book, but what I can guarantee you is that there will be minimally a digital copy of the book available on this Substack by the end of the year. I'm hoping to get the full book done, but I don't know if that's possible because I don't know how this stuff works. I've never done this before. You guys got to hang with me with this. But what I can tell you is that I basically, like, I just need to put my head down and finish out the content for it. I have everything done other than that. And so I will make sure there is some sort of digital version, even if it's just a PDF download, that is available on this Substack by the end of the year. And that way, everyone's going to have this resource. No one's going to have any more excuse. Everyone's going to have a study guide for all the socialism classes. Anytime someone new comes in, we say, here is your required reading, new person. And they say, I don't want to read your book. You just want to make money. I say, okay, well, you're not going to understand my content until you read this book. And then eventually they're going to break down and they're going to realize that they need to read the book. And then they're going to go, wow, I should have read this book in the first place. And we're going to go, yeah, we told you should have read the book in the first place. The book got created for a reason because it needed to be created for more people to understand this content. All right. So that's what's going on. That's why I didn't have a stream yesterday. I was working very hard and very diligently on getting the introduction to the book done, which you can currently read on speaksocialist.substack.com. And I really do appreciate all the support. Thank you guys who have made all this possible. Let me go into these super chats. We've got Janice Zeal. As someone who grew up in the system, that stuff comes off as weird, as par for the course. Karlyn gets hugs. Thank you, Janice. Tolkien fan! Hey, Karlyn, how's it going? Loving the re-education series and the Socialist Dictionary. Have you received the package I sent? I hope it made it in one piece. Yes, I did. I actually showed it off on a stream last week, Tolkien fan. What Tolkien fan did is it's a beautiful mug that has my name in Elvish on it. And I thought it was so cool. I showed it off on a stream last week. I think I posted a picture of it on Twitter. Thank you so much for the wonderful gift. I really did appreciate it. I had some tea in it last week. I think it's downstairs right now, so I can't show it off. But hey, I really do appreciate the gift. Thank you so much for that. Tayton says Mark Zuckerberg was a libertarian. I don't know about that. Thank you, Tayton. Milo says, end all public schooling now. For real. For real. Well, guys, with that ample introduction out of the way, you know what we were going to do today? Is what I had originally planned was to visit our friends at the Anarchist Library. And, oh, my computer's trying to download an update. That's why everything keeps going crazy. Okay, I see now. And so there's an organization called CrimeThink, CrimeThinc. This organization is one of the publishing arms for Antifa. And I know that because when we started getting into zines and all that stuff, like several months ago, I sent Andy Ngo a message and I said, Andy, what are the organizations that are publishing documents with Antifa? And he pointed out CrimeThink as one of the organizations that he saw showing up over and over and over again in these documents. And so I was like, all right, well, that's something to keep an eye on. And then this popped up on the Anarchist Library, and I was like, well, that adds up. Breaking with Consensus Reality. It's all about anarchism and revolution and all that stuff. We're going to listen to that today. I also have their website pulled up here, and it's just CrimeThink Inc. Yeah, this is like a big deal. Something that we need to spend some time on, for sure. Humans sent a P. Diddy. But check this out. Isn't this funny? Check this out. They've got an article on their website right now. Queer wanderings through the other Germany and the anti-Nazi underworld. Are you telling me that actual Antifa members are equating queer with being anti-Nazi? So then that would mean Nazi would be anti-queer. I'm just saying, I haven't read that or anything. I just thought that that was a funny way to put it, like queer wanderings in the anti-Nazi underworld. What do they think Nazi means? How are they defining it? Because who knows, really, it could be something completely different than what most of us think of when we think of anti-Nazi or pro-Nazi for that matter. I'm not making a judgment call either way. I'm just saying it's an interesting juxtaposition that I didn't expect. Anyway, I was thinking about listening to this, and we will listen to this at some point, but then I was like, I'm tired. And I don't know if I want to do Antifa today because Antifa can be a handful. Like the queer Marxists, it can be a handful. It can be very wordy. It can take a lot of brain power to process this stuff. And I was up till 4 a.m. on a Twitter space because a friend of mine got doxxed and he was upset about it and he was having a Twitter space about it. And I was like, I just don't know if I have the energy right now to do Antifa. Even though I really do want to. Just maybe not today. Okay, maybe not today. So instead, what I decided to do was go back to an old James Lindsay standby that I've been meaning to watch for a while. Now, let me just actually get it so it's not a blank screen, maybe. Why is my whole computer so slow right now? This is awful. What is my computer downloading? The queer Gnostic cult. Hang on, let's get this to load. Hang on. I know you can't hear this, but hang on. The queer Gnostic cult. Now, this is an almost 4-hour podcast that James released well over a year ago. He released it on March 31st, 2023. Now, this is back when I wasn't listening to what James was saying, because there was a really long period between June of 2021 and the end of, and I know that specifically because I went to an event that James had in person in June of 2021, and that was basically the last time I listened to him. And it wasn't because I had any ill will towards him. It was because I was starting to do deep dives into the far left, and I actually wanted to keep our work separate. I didn't want to be influenced by James. So what I wanted was I wanted to be able to do my own research and come to my own conclusions without being influenced by James. And then I was like, if we end up aligning in these things, that's good. If we don't end up aligning in these things, that's bad. But I just started ignoring everything he was doing in June of 2021. Fast forward until the end of 2023, and James has sold out to Moms for Liberty. And James is starting to shill all this crazy shit. And he's talking about Oprah and some Gnostic sex cult conspiracy. And people kept messaging me and they were like, Karlyn, what the fuck is James talking about? I was like, I don't know, I'm not paying attention to him. Just leave him alone. And I covered for his ass for a long time. Every time someone would DM me on Twitter, I'd be like, I don't know what's going on and I don't care. Just leave him alone. And then I started actually looking at what he was saying, and I was like, what the fuck is James talking about? Because between that time period, I had been doing a lot of coverage of queer Marxism. I had been doing extensive coverage of Abolish the Family. I know what actual queer Marxist activists say. I know what they're teaching. Like, better than anyone else in the country, and I would put my knowledge up against anyone, and I will debate anyone on this topic, and I will bring primary source video evidence. I know what these people are teaching. My audience knows what these people are teaching. We have watched hundreds of hours of queer activism, abolish the family, abolish the gender binary, all this stuff. We have watched hundreds of hours of far left trainings on this topic. We know what they're saying. What they are saying and what James is saying bears no resemblance to each other at all. Absolutely none. And so I started to figure this out at the end of 2023, and that's when I started revisiting James's content, and that's when it all went awry. For people who want to know why James, Lindsay, and I are currently in a very public feud where he insults me and he says I'm a narcissist and he says I have borderline personality disorder and he claims I just want to fuck him. And I'm like, I have very real intellectual disagreements with you, motherfucker. It's all because James went insane. And he became completely unhinged from reality. And I haven't done the work of going back and reverse engineering all of the ways in which James has become unhinged from reality. But I feel like I probably should listen to this podcast. And we should probably dissect this podcast together, because this was in early 2023. And in early 2023, James was already talking about Oprah as the leader of the new age WEF, NWO, Worldwide Gnostic Sex Cult Conspiracy Theory? Is this where he went down the Eric Voglin rabbit hole? Okay. See, we need to listen to this. And the reason we need to listen to it is we need to understand the arguments that he's making. Because at some point, either James will relent and actually debate me and have an intellectual conversation about this, in which case I need to know what his actual arguments are. I'm not going to do what James does. I'm not going to fucking ad hominem the whole thing. I'm not just going to insult him. I'm going to be like, James, in your podcast about the queer Gnostic sex cult, you said X, Y, B, and Z. That is wrong for reason A, B, C, and D. And here's footage to back up that you are wrong. So we need to listen to this, and we're going to do it together. And I have coffee, and I also have alcohol in my trusty little fridge that's under my desk. And that's what we're going to do today. And maybe tomorrow we'll do Antifa. But I need to be in a certain mood to do Antifa, and I'm not in that mood today. So we're going to do this today. Is everyone on board with this? Does this sound like a good plan? If that sounds like a good plan, please make sure you have mounted the like button for me. Mounting the like button allows YouTube to know to recommend my content to more people because I am perpetually shadow banned on YouTube, except for rare occasions when I get myself out of the shadow ban. Rare occasions indeed, which does happen every once in a while. But I need everyone to like the video for me if you haven't liked it already. I need everyone to make sure they are subscribed. And we're all in this together. We can do this. We are descending into the land of Retardia. Hey bot, did you ever send me the high-res image in my inbox with the kissing cave? I know you sent it to me on DM, but did you actually send me the high-res image? If you did, thank you, and I haven't seen it yet. If you didn't, please send it. All right. All right, let's do it. Okay, we're doing it. Thank you, bot. I appreciate you. Well,
hello, everyone. It's James Lindsay. You are listening to the New Discourses podcast, and we're going to go somewhere deep and crazy today. We were going to cover queer theory, but I'm not going to cover queer theory as queer theory. I'm not going to do some overarching introduction to it. In fact, this podcast has been something that I've been kind of sitting on or working on is a better way to put it, because I finally put my notes together and finished them today for the better part of 3 months. And since it's like mid-March in the new year here,
3 whole months,
most of this
James?
year I've been trying to figure out how to put this together. I didn't know how I wanted to communicate this, and so there's been a little bit of a struggle, but we're going to talk about queer theory as a form of postmodern Gnostic cult religion, because I think that's the way we have to understand it. We have to understand that queer theory is a cult religion. In fact, it is based on Gnosticism and Hermeticism. If you've listened to the podcast, Gnosticism in the Modern West that I did recently, it's a couple hours long. It's not really easy. I go into Gnosticism. I talk about the word gnosis and what Gnostic represents. I give 4 definitions for Gnostic. I explain why it's a complicated term and complicated terminology. I give some explanation as to how Hegel and Marx, that's some characters we're probably going to talk about here today, especially Hegel, I know for sure we're going to mention quite a bit, retooled Gnosticism. The basic case I make is that in the Middle Ages, maybe starting as early as the 12th or 13th century, but certainly by the 15th century in Europe, there was a kind of what we would consider a new...
Wait, James's argument is that queer theory started in the 12th century because that's when Gnosticism started? Are you shitting me? This podcast was the point of no return. See, that's kind of what I was thinking too, Rottweiler. That is exactly and precisely what I was thinking as well. Thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate it.
New Age bloom, this New Age theosophy that we see, you know, with all the spiritualism and, you know, the consciousness and all of this, you know, mindfulness stuff that we see today. Everything we think of as New Age, hippie, spiritual stuff.
Are you fucking shitting me? I'm sorry. I swear I'm not going to pause this every 2 seconds. But James is saying, my computer's like freaking out right now. James is saying that mindfulness is Gnosticism. I literally wrote a fucking book about mindfulness, motherfucker. Do you know what mindfulness boils down to? Mindfulness boils down to being aware of what is going on in your mind, being aware of what is going on in your body, being aware of what is going on all around you in the present moment, being in the present moment, not existing in the past, not existing in the future, but existing right now. That's all that is. And then forming a non-judgmental attitude to say that you can look at things from many different perspectives. You can always look at things from multiple perspectives. And if you can just reserve judgment on those things, you can make sure you can look at them in the way that's most advantageous. That is what mindfulness means, you asshole! I know that's not a very mindful thing to say, but do I have it on my desk? But I literally wrote a book about this. I was studying this shit for years. James doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He wants to say that, oh, this is all just Gnosticism is new age hippy dippy. Come on. I'm going to be yelling this entire stream. Yeah. I thought Gnosticism began as early church heresy, way earlier than James is stating, and it had nothing to do with mindfulness. Mindfulness is completely separate from Gnosticism, James! Everyone, let's find our Zen. Everyone, okay, let me do a mindfulness practice. Here's what I want everyone to do. I want everyone to put their feet on the floor, feet flat on the floor, legs uncrossed. I want you to have your arms by your side, no crossing your arms. I want you to just relax for a minute, close your eyes. And I want you to allow yourself to take a nice, long, slow breath in through your nose. Feel the breath traveling all the way down your throat, through your lungs, into your belly, and hold it when it gets to your belly. And then release slowly through the mouth. Okay, we're going to do that a couple more times. Everyone ready? Everyone feeling good? Breathe in deeply. Our body wants to breathe in deeply. Our body wants that full oxygenation. Breathe in through the nose. Without knocking anything over on your desk, breathe in through your nose. Feel the breath travel all the way down your throat, all the way through your lungs, all the way into your belly, and hold your breath. And then release slowly through the mouth. Let's go ahead and do that one more time for being extra mindful for the situation we're putting ourselves through today. Breathe in slowly through the nose. Allow the breath to travel all the way down your throat, through your lungs, into your belly. And then breathe out slowly through your mouth. Did you know, and this is a mindfulness fun fact, did you know that human beings can go 30 days without eating? They can go 3 to 5 days without water. We can't go more than a couple of minutes without our breath. The breath is what our body needs in order to operate at its most mindful. And the thing is, when we have taught ourselves through virtue of living in the crazy world to breathe in shallowly. Most of us breathe in very shallowly. And so our body is actually not getting the full level of oxygenation that we need because we've trained our body to breathe shallowly. But if you feel yourself stressed out, if you feel like you're yelling on the internet because an asshole with a platform is deceiving millions and millions of people and actually preventing them from accessing strategies that could be monumentally helpful for them, like mindfulness, just put your feet flat on the floor. Put your arms at your sides, no crossing your arms, no crossing your legs, sit up with a straight back, and then breathe in slowly 3 to 5 times. You don't need to close your eyes if you're not in a place where you can do it, but breathe in slowly, hold the breath, and then slowly breathe out. And just all your focus needs to be on the breath. Everything, just block out everything else around you. The only thing that matters for that couple of minutes is the breath, the sound of the breath going in, the sound of the breath coming out, and just be present in that process. And what that's going to do is it's going to slow down your entire nervous system, and it's going to allow you to feel really good. And James wants to fucking call this Gnosticism. James can eat every single dick. All right? This is not Gnosticism. And it's certainly not queer theory. Christian, let's make it rain. Lincoln's in here. Lindsay is so far off that listening to him is pointless other than learning how wrong he is. Is Christian my new favorite person in the chat, or is Christian my new favorite person in the chat? Obviously. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate it. See, you guys didn't know you were getting meditation today. That's the service I provide. Does James teach you how to meditate? No.
Turns out there was a New Age movement of a kind in the Middle Ages. And the New Age movement was, in my opinion, rooted in Gnosticism and Hermeticism. I don't actually think that that's particularly controversial. It spread like kind of wildfire in certain circles, especially elite circles throughout Europe. And my opinion is that Jean-Jacques Rousseau in France gave one of the first real modern articulations of this Gnostic belief. Hegel, who was an outright Hermeticist in Germany about a generation later, picks it up, following also from Kant, Immanuel Kant, who was also a big fan of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, to the point where it's kind of tremendous. He had only one decoration in his study, and it was a portrait of Rousseau. It was famous. I guess the guy was a little OCD, a little strange. It was said that you could actually set your clock by Immanuel Kant's walks. He would take these walks, and the one time he ever missed his walk is when he had his nose buried deep in Rousseau. He was so captivated and interested in this. And there's a lot of deep stuff we could get into philosophically there, but the point is that these people aren't philosophers. They're Gnostics. They're wizards. They're esotericists. They, in fact, are not part of the Enlightenment tradition, but they are a reaction to it. They're not the faith-based religious reaction that we normally think of. They are, in fact, a Gnostic or a mystical reaction. I call this the romantic reaction because, in my opinion, Rousseau was one of the first main characters to articulate it. But I don't want to, Rousseau's really, in Romanticism, really kind of at the center of this queer Gnostic thing. But I'm just pointing you toward that podcast. If you haven't listened to it, you probably should. Not necessarily before you listen to this one. I know it's a lot more time. But it's really important to realize what we're dealing with. And some of what I say may not make a lot of sense unless you understand how this New Age movement was codified.
It's not New Age.
And modernized. And I mean that with like a kind of a capital M, brought into the modern era and relocated.
So he has literally been saying since the beginning of 2023 that queer theory is New Age spirituality. Are you shitting me? I'm breathing.
Into social politics outside of old school spiritual realms in order to understand what I'm going to talk about here, and thus to understand queer theory. So if you want to understand queer theory, we have to understand esoteric belief. We also have to understand how esoteric belief was transformed in the modern era and how then that evolved into the postmodern era, because queer theory is by far the most postmodern of the branches of what we might call woke theory. And so I have extensive notes. I'm not going to ramble and preamble here.
Does anyone know where the term postmodern comes from? Can someone educate me on that, please?
I want to get through these and not have this be super long, but this is going to be a different take on queer theory than probably anybody's ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm going to frame it as queer Gnosticism. I'm going to give the same disclaimer I gave in that other podcast that Gnostic means several things, at least 4. I am not talking about the first century Christian cults.
Yeah.
Those are Gnostic.
Yeah. Did Average Person just come up with a new t-shirt design? Do I need to make a school t-shirt for the Retardia School of Gnosticism and Wizardry? Hey, bot, can you add another thing to the map? Bot, can you make some Hogwarts-type castle on the map? And label it the Retardia School of Gnosticism and Wizardry? We need another map update.
As well, in a broader sense. I am talking about that broader sense. And the broader sense of Gnostic includes another thing called Hermeticism. Hermeticism is a ancient religion. Sometimes it's said to arise out of Egypt. Sometimes it's said to arise out of what we would call Iraq now, Babylonian. Sometimes it's said to be
about the mystery schools?
Indian. I don't know where its actual origins are. It's credited. Hermetic refers to Hermes. That's credited to the Egyptian god, who is the equivalent of Hermes.
He's talking about the Egyptian mystery schools. Okay, I've studied in the traditions of the Egyptian mystery schools, James, so we'll see how much you figured out about that. The term postmodernity was first used in an academic historical context as a general concept for a movement by Arnold B. Toynbee in 1939. Okay, but what is it like? What was the context of him coming up with, like, who is he? Was he a postmodernist, or was he using it as like, these people are idiots? Like maybe I should just look it up on AI. I probably should. Thank you, Rottweiler. I appreciate it.
That's spelled like you would pronounce it, I've been told, and I have not checked this, so I'm going to say both. One of them's right, one of them's wrong. I don't know which. But there's an Egyptian god that you would think is pronounced Thoth, Thoth.
It is, yep.
I'm told.
Yeah, James is talking about the Egyptian mystery schools. That's the Thoth Tarot deck by Aleister Crowley. Thoth, yeah, James is talking about the fucking mystery schools.
The Egyptian pronunciation of this may be Tehote. I don't know if that's true or not.
No,
but at any rate, it's spelled Thoth. And this is the ibis-headed, or ibis-headed, I guess that's the bird, messenger god. And Hermes, the messenger god, or Mercury, which is also the basis for the name of the alchemy-based metal, upon which alchemy has a lot to do with Hermeticism, that we see in Greek and Roman mythology and kind of parallel. So, but I don't want to ramble further. Without further ado, you need to hear those terms, though. Gnosticism, Hermeticism. That Gnostic doesn't just mean the narrow definition of the handful of Christian cults in the first century that got put down by, say, Irenaeus and others. It's got a broader definition, and we're going to kind of get into that. But I want to start with a quote from our favorite academic paper of all time, the Drag Queen Story Hour paper that was called Drag Pedagogy. Not to give you more homework to do, but if you want to know what I'm talking about with regard to that paper, I think you need to go listen to the
pop quiz. Can someone in my chat please summarize for me what the purpose and intent of Drag Queen Story Hour is based on that Drag Queen Story Hour paper? It's not a long summary. Everyone should know this. What do you guys think that paper says? What is the purpose of Drag Queen Story Hour? According to that Drag Queen Story Hour paper. You don't even need to know. You don't even need to have read that paper to figure this out. But James is going to say it means something completely different. What does that paper say, do you think? That paper says that drag is to teach kids that gender is a performance. To teach kids that gender is a performance. To teach kids that gender is a performance. Gender is a performance. That's what Judith Butler taught. To show gender is performative, Drag Queen Story Hour is a way to directly teach kids that gender is a performance, that changing your gender is as easy as changing an outfit. James had to have a whole 4-hour podcast to teach people that. I don't really understand why. Because we can say it in one sentence, James. It's to teach children that gender is a performance and fluid, as easy as changing your outfit. Gender performativity. does it also talk about alternative modes of kinship? Does it say that? Or are you guessing, or do you know that? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it did, but I know that heavily it talks about gender being a performance and that being the purpose of Drag Queen Story Hour, although drag queens do have an alternative mode of kinship as well with drag mothers and things like that, and so that absolutely could be in there as well. It wouldn't surprise me. Of course, there's a concept of abolishing the family, normalizing gender as a social construct. Yup. Bet James's audience can't recite stuff like this. Yeah, it's a Gnostic sex cult, Joseph. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, I figured you would read it, Tatum. Yep, I figured. That doesn't come, well, I mean, it doesn't come from that paper. That paper may have mentioned it, but that paper wasn't the first place to talk about alternative modes of kinship. Because that's queer Marxism, and in order to abolish the family, they need to establish alternate means of people forming families of choice.
There were podcasts here on the New Discourses podcast where I recorded the entirety of that and contextualized it for you, which was called Groomer Schools 4. You can also look up on Twitter if you want. I did a mega thread back last year around Christmas.
Yeah, okay.
And I called it Groomer School Story Hour. Groomer Clown Story Hour. So you can look up Groomer Clown Story Hour on Twitter.
So he completely missed the fucking point.
In the search function, and probably find my mega thread going through virtually every line of the paper and decoding it for you in even greater depth and detail than I did in the podcast. But I'm going to pull this quote. So I'm not actually quoting directly from the paper. I'm actually quoting the paper, quoting somebody else to open this up. So the paper introduces this book called, a 2009 book called Cruising Utopia, which was written by Jose Esteban Munoz, a queer theorist, obviously a Latin queer theorist. And this is the quote that they stick in the Drag Queen Story Hour paper from Munoz. Queerness is not yet here. Queerness is an ideality. Put another way.
Why isn't queerness here yet? Pop quiz for the chat. Why isn't queerness here yet? Let's see if we get the answer before James does. Why isn't queerness here yet? Queerness isn't here yet because capitalism has not yet been abolished. Because capitalism has not yet been abolished, queerness means anti-capitalism, which means Marxism. Queer means communism because we haven't destroyed capitalism yet, because queer will only be here when capitalism is gone. Capitalism and the nuclear family still exist because capitalism has not yet been overthrown. Queerness isn't here because the nuclear family is in the process of being abolished to overthrow capitalism. Capitalism is yet to be abolished. Capitalism is still here, still here. See, everyone is so smart on my channel. I have all the smartest people on the internet here. We are an exclusive club of smart people on the internet.
We are not yet queer. We may never touch queerness, but we can feel it as the warm illumination of a horizon imbued with potentiality.
Oh my God.
We have never been queer. Yet queerness exists for us as an ideality that can be distilled from the past and used to imagine a future. The future is queerness's domain.
What does all this mean, James?
Is a structuring and educated mode of desiring that allows us to see and feel beyond the quagmire of the present. The here and now is a prison house. That's apparently from page 1 of this book, Cruising.
What does that mean, James? Do you know what any of that means? They're talking about overthrowing capitalism. Capitalism is the prison. When they're talking about a future that they can see but they have never experienced, they're talking about communism. I don't know why this is so difficult. This is obvious to anyone who understands the language.
Utopia. And I insist it is not possible to understand that paragraph that I just read with no added varnish or interpretation.
Really?
It's not possible to understand that paragraph without understanding that what you're listening to is an expression of queer Gnosticism.
Oh my fucking God! James, literally everyone in my audience understood what that paragraph meant. And none of us buy into your queer Gnosticism bullshit. Everyone who understands that queer means communism, and that queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism, understands everything in that paragraph. It is talking about a future communist utopia that they have never experienced, but they can see on the horizon out of the prison that capitalism has created for them. That's what that means. Like, but no, you need to understand Gnosticism in order to understand that paragraph. No, James. What you need to do is listen to queer Marxists in the real fucking world who talk about overthrowing capitalism all the time. That's what you need to do. We're not even 10 minutes into this podcast.
This is Gnostic religion, and I mean that both Hermetic and Gnostic at the same time.
Wrong.
One of the things that I
Completely
actually
wrong.
credit Hegel and Marx kind of in tandem with doing is fusing Hermeticism and Gnosticism
Completely
together,
wrong.
calling them science and hiding them within politics, economics, and social theory. So Hermeticism and Gnosticism, as I mentioned before, are not the same thing. They are two different religions, but they both they're both Gnostic with a lowercase g, and the fact that they both rely on esoteric, hidden knowledge, usually knowledge of yourself, self-knowledge, that has the ability to lead you into salvation from your fallen state in the world, we'll put it for the moment. And I assert, especially when we hear that here and now is a prison house, for those of you who have listened to the materials that I put out so far or read any of the materials I put out so far about Gnosticism, you understand that once you see that invocation of the prison, you probably can bet you're dealing with Gnosticism. And the reason is because Gnosticism...
James, the prison is capitalism. The prison is not a reference to Gnosticism. The prison is a reference to capitalism. One of the main issues that socialists have is abolition. Abolition means the abolition of the prison industrial complex. When socialists say prison, they are referencing capitalism because they believe that the police and the prison industrial complex are the enforcement mechanisms of capitalism. How did this happen? I know, like... Oh man, James must have some Pisces in his astrological chart because he just went completely ungrounded from reality.
As a broad religious architecture, again, not the specific Christian cults of the 1st and 2nd centuries, believes that the universe, being, everything, the world, is a prison, that it was constructed by this character called the demiurge, who is the product of sinful thought by Sophia, the feminine aspect of the mind of God.
Why did I do this?
And there's a whole mythology behind that we don't have to get into. But the demiurge is what's called Yahweh, or God in the Bible. In the story of Genesis, he is the creator. He makes the heavens and earth and so on. But it's actually, he's making it as a prison for the spiritual being called man. So the world, the universe.
I have so many regrets, right? We should be listening to Antifa right now. This was a mistake. Yeah, can we watch Antifa instead?
Being itself and
Thanks,
us, our bodies, are a prison for our souls. And Gnosticism believes that if you obtain this knowledge about yourself, that you are actually in no way different than the deity, and in no way separate from the deity, locked away in your mundane body, trapped in the mundane world of suffering as we are. If you receive this knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil, as it were, then you can free yourself from the prison of being. Maybe not until you die,
Thank you,
maybe
Peyton.
only spiritually, but you can actually escape the prison house of the here and now.
That's not what that means.
And so when we hear that the here and now is a prison house in this statement, we know that we're dealing with queer Gnosticism. That's open and shut. Case closed. Podcast over. Just kidding. When we see that it is a educated mode of desiring that allows us to see and feel beyond the quagmire of the present, and it talks about being rooted in the progress of history into potentialities in the future, we know we're dealing with Hegelian Hermeticism.
Wait, we have to do a pause because Bot has just DM'd me the updated map. And so for people who don't know what the map is, let me get the map out. Let me get the map up on a place where I can show you the map without doxing anyone. Oh no. This is going to be a break from the insanity of this. Hang on, it's loading. Open image in new tab. There we go. Here is the updated map of the land of Retardia. And I think I'm going to put this on a t-shirt. Don't worry. I'm going to make a poster. Here is, if my screen wants to actually share, please, StreamYard. It says it's sharing, but it's not sharing. Browser can't access this. What the fuck? Okay. There it goes. No! What the fuck? Did everything seriously just break? Okay, let me try doing this in Chrome then, I guess. Better be able to access Chrome. If you can't, we might have to end the stream. Oh no, here we go. All right, so we have the updated map here. It's a little bit blurry, but we're going to be able to see the full one. So this is the map of the land of Retardia. And we have the Gnostic sex cult. We have the woods of Retardia. We have the court of King James Lindsay I. We have the home of Kissin the Deluded. And now, just added, we have the Retardia School of Gnosticism and Wizardry. Which is right next to the Gnostic sex cult, which is actually really perfect. I really think the map is coming together. Nope, we've already got, well, Kissin Cove would have actually been good, but I like the home of Kissin and the Deluded more because eventually he's going to turn into a golem. And, yeah, this is high art. Don't worry about it, Gloria. Essentially, the answer is that we are shipping all the people we don't like off to Australia. This is high art. And we have Bot to thank for it. All right. Back to the video. Back to James being a moron on the internet.
The transformation of history from what it was as a mystical scientific pursuit, scientific in the way that Plato meant scientia, into what it's supposed to be. And so we know that this is a Gnostic and Hermetic expression, but what I read is not comprehensible. Queer theory is not comprehensible without understanding that it's queer Gnosticism.
Yes, you should email that to me.
So like I said, I had a very hard time trying to figure out how to communicate this to you. I've had a general idea of the kind of overview points that I want to make this story. In fact, I've said them, my poor coworkers and friends, some of these people have heard this on the phone from me so many times. I can do it in about 10 minutes.
And no one thought to question you, James? No one thought to say, James, are you sure this is correct? Kristen, didn't James Lindsay said he wasn't going to ramble? Yeah, he rambled for almost 4 hours. We're absolutely not listening to the whole thing because we are shipping all the people that we don't like to Australia. Okay, that is the plan. Australia is going back to its roots as a penal colony.
And then podcast over. But I want to deliver it with evidence. I want to bring the literature, like I usually do, to light for you, to really make the case of just how deep this goes.
Yeah, okay.
And I kept trying, and I kept getting bogged down. I had the podcaster's equivalent of writer's block, and it got more and more convoluted. It got hard to follow. I didn't know what to do. I scrapped a bunch of attempts. What I finally decided is something that I wouldn't normally do. I'm not going to try to come up with some grand arching flow like a great podcast would be, or like a book, or maybe this is the right structure. I don't know. But I'm going to give you the big overview first, maybe not quite in a 10-minute condensed form where I'm used to talking to people who kind of know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to give you that condensed overview, and then I'm going to give you pieces of the literature, deep pieces of literature, so you can see just how actually deep this claim goes, that queer theory is queer Gnosticism. In other words, queer theory is the doctrine of a Gnostic cult rooted in sex and sexuality, which they are inducing your children into, initiating your children into in school under banners like comprehensive sexuality education and drag queen story hour and gender education.
Wrong. That's not what they're doing.
So the simple case is coming first. Then we're going to go back to the literature to make it really clear just how deeply right I am about this claim that sounds preposterous that the internet will probably make fun of me for. You get used to that, by the way. So, like I said, what this means, and I need you to keep...
James says, I tried to put together a podcast in which I showed you proof, but it was really too hard and I had writer's block. So instead, he's doing this. So he's saying he has no actual proof. Yes.
Keep this in mind as we go. Queer theory. First of all, by the way, you've heard of critical race theory. Everybody's heard of critical race theory now. It has a cousin. That cousin is queer theory.
It's not
critical
a cousin.
Race theory deals with race.
It's all the same.
Queer theory deals with sex, gender, and sexuality. Primarily, but it can touch virtually anything. And it's the cousin. In fact, it's the exact parallel of critical race theory. But because they deal with different subjects and they deal with them in different ways, they aren't identical. They are also used in tandem. If you listen to Groomer Schools 3, you'll understand that critical race theory is actually used with our children to set up Maoist-style identity politics to push our children into feeling bad about something they can't change, which is their skin color and race, and then to push them into a way out of that through queer identification. So queer theory is...
James is saying that the goal of critical race theory is to teach children to feel bad about their race. Oh my fucking God.
Is A, much more dangerous than critical race theory, much more destructive, as we'll hear, and B, it is also an intended destination. Critical race theory is a setup to get kids to fall into queer theory. As I said with Charlie Kirk a year and a half ago on stage in front of thousands of young people. I think it was at America Fest 2021. I said that queer theory opens the gates to hell. He wanted to talk about CRT, and I just cut him off. And I said, Charlie, listen, we always want to talk about CRT. We haven't talked about queer theory. You have to understand queer theory opens the gates to hell. It's
a
million times worse. I don't know what the real number is. Maybe 10 times worse than CRT. It's much worse. And it is the doctrine for a cult.
No.
A very dangerous cult.
Critical race theory has nothing to do with your skin color. It has to do with systemic racism, which is capitalism. Anyone who thinks that critical race theory is about skin color has not been paying attention and has probably been listening to James, who has lied to them. There was a time when I thought it was about skin color too, and then I listened and I evolved. Because the evidence doesn't back it up that it's about skin color. In fact, they say explicitly it's not about skin color, that black people can be white too. Well, if black people can be white too, then it's not about fucking skin color.
That's consuming our children and consuming our society. It's almost wholly destructive. It's almost, it's just consuming and dissolving like an acid or a fire. It doesn't build. It only deconstructs and tears apart. It tears apart minds. It tears apart families. It tears apart religions. It's truly a consuming demon. Now, in a sense, all of this is true of its kind of parent philosophy, which is largely Marxism. And queer theory is a part of Marxism. I did a short
True.
podcast a while back, or a
Finally,
couple
a
of them
nugget of
actually,
truth.
indicating that queer theory is queer Marxism. And I made the
Correct.
case there.
What does
But it's in a
Marx wanna
sense,
do,
it's far more
James?
tangibly true and importantly true in queer theory that it is a destructive cult.
Destructive to what?
So that means that teaching queer theory or teaching gender theory
say.
or what we call gender ideology in schools is
Queer theory is Marxism. Oh yeah, what did Marx want to do, James? Did Marx want to abolish capitalism? Then why aren't we saying that queer theory is about abolishing capitalism? Because you just said it's Marxism. All Marx wanted to do was abolish capitalism. That's it. So why aren't we saying that queer theory is about abolishing capitalism if queer theory is the same as queer Marxism, which it is?
not just religious instruction. It is which it is, by the way. It is religious instruction. It is in no way permissible under the First Amendment when you understand what queer theory actually is. But it's not just religious instruction. It is cult induction. It is using pieces of cult initiation to induce our children into a very destructive, very dangerous, very toxic Gnostic religious cult.
No,
you must understand what this is
wrong.
about.
Completely
So in fact,
wrong.
much of what happens in queer education is in fact cult initiation.
No.
We talked about that in the podcast I called Groomer Schools 2. So these are pieces of this puzzle have been coming out for a long time. Not that I was like drip feeding you. I'm figuring it out for myself. I'm kind of drip feeding myself and giving you the best of what I have as I go. So it's cult initiation. But the thing is, they know it's cult initiation. Their relentless crusade against childhood innocence, which we discussed before, particularly that whole podcast is about their crusade against childhood innocence. Groomer Schools 2 in the New Discourses podcast. You can go look it up.
Completely wrong.
That's part of a transformational pair of opposites, what they call a binary, that's explicitly described in their literature as innocence versus initiation. And so the second you realize that they possess
James thinks that the binary that queer Marxists care about is innocence versus initiation, and has not mentioned the gender binary at all, which is the only thing they actually care about. Yeah, we share the same vocabulary as James, but we do not share the same dictionary as James. Oh my God.
Position childhood innocence against childhood initiation. You have to ask the question, initiation into what? And the answer is a cult. Their cult.
Wrong.
Queer Gnosticism. So it's a cult. They know it's a cult.
Wrong.
They know they are initiating kids. They are doing initiatory acts to bring children into this way of this cult perspective of viewing the world. And they're doing it very intentionally with very sophisticated techniques. And in that podcast and Groomer Schools 2, I talked about how they are directly targeting, intentionally targeting the early childhood education literature and the developmental psychology, childhood developmental psychology literature with queer theory, because neither of those support the idea that you should be initiating kids into a sex cult or a sex-based cult. Child developmental psychology would throw queer theory in a river of fire immediately. But now they're queering that because it's run by academics who have absolutely no resistance to any of this because they're weak, because they take their ideas too seriously, etc. Childhood developmental psychology would burn.
James is one to talk about taking their own ideas too seriously. Holy shit. This is crazy. Okay, listen, if you are new to me, you might not understand why my entire audience is rebelling in the chat right now. Because, listen, if you're new to me, come and watch queer Marxist content with me. and you will understand the difference between what queer Marxists say and do in the real world, which, by the way, is way fucking worse than anything James has told you. It's way worse. But what James is saying is completely unhinged from reality in the real world. It just is. And this is the problem. And I keep saying this over and over and over again. James is lying to and deceiving millions of people with this Gnosticism bullshit. And I hear this from people all the time who've listened to James. They're like, Karlyn, queer is Gnostic. Queer is Gnostic. I'm like, no, it's not. And they're like, yes, it is, Karlyn. It has Gnostic roots. Let me explain. I'm like, no, it's not. You need to unlearn that. It's not real. James has made up a fantasy, and then he has cherry-picked like philosophers that back up the fantasy that he has created in his head. I don't read cherry-picked philosophy. I watched real queer Marxists in the real world. I have hundreds of hours of their trainings documented. This is unhinged from reality. And I know many of you know that because a lot of you have watched me for a while, but there might be new people here that are watching this just because I'm talking about James. And I really want to make sure they know that, like, just come watch queer theory with us. Come watch queer Marxism with us. We do it all the time. It's one of our favorite topics. And it's not what James is saying it is. It's way worse.
Burn queer theory to the ground. So what they're doing is colonizing the psychology. So that when you show up to court and you say, you're harming my children, this is negligent and deliberate harm against my children, and you get an expert to testify to that, they have experts who are childhood developmental psychology experts under the queer umbrella who refute you and say, no, that's all the old heteronormative, patriarchal, or whatever view of childhood developmental psychology. We have the new view, which is takes into account the insights of queer theory. In other words, they're subsuming the science of childhood development and early childhood education, which is not a science, into the envelope of their cult interpretation. When I said Plato's idea of science with the scientia, that's what I mean. What we think of as science, the scientific methods and so on, is what Plato would have described under the term dianoia, which is technical knowledge that informs being able to do things, technical skill, which he called techne. And that's a lower form of knowledge and activity, but a higher form is the kind of reasoned understanding, the philosophy that glues it all together, and that's episteme. That's higher knowing, where we get our word epistemology, which is the science of knowing. And the episteme gets to contour the dianoia. Now, Hegel imported this directly and called it Verstand, which is a German word for understanding. And that's the lower level. That's just scientific knowledge or traditional theory, as Max Horkheimer called it. And there's a higher level. Hegel called it Vernunft, which gets translated as reason, and what Horkheimer called critical theory, which brings in the critical dimension of seeing through the biases and assumptions of existing reality and bringing in a moral dimension and a purposed direction to our analysis. And it has to override and contour the results of the lower level. So it doesn't matter if we call it, Platonic scientia or Hegelian System der Wissenschaft or traditional and critical theory. It doesn't matter which one we call it. It's the same thing, is that they think that their cult interpretation gets to override and subsume actually understanding the world, including childhood developmental psychology. And why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, partly because you're in a cult and think that your cult must inform everything, just like we heard from Mao in the podcast I did about Mao recently, where he said, the sciences and the arts have to have freedom to explore other ideas. But what science or...
James is actually projecting his own bullshit onto them. Because it's actually James that's created a little cult for himself, and it's actually James who thinks that his cult needs to reinforce everything that he thinks, and he's now he's not it's not incorrect to say that cults will try to reinforce themselves, and it is true that I do believe that Marxism and communism is a cult, and I do believe that people are indoctrinated in the public schools, but not in the way that James is saying.
Or what art could disagree with socialism? Because socialism is Gnostic. It's Gnosis.
Oh my God.
Socialism is Gnosis. And so it must subsume
Seriously?
the sciences and the arts.
Seriously?
And the way it does it is that technique I've called, which you can look this up too. I know it gets hard to follow me, but there's so many pieces to this.
That's
It
because
would
you're
take 10
making
hours to
shit
do every
up.
podcast to explain all this. There's a thing I call dialectical inversion, where what they basically assert is that kind of everything is on the same playing field there. What you do is science, what I do is science. What you do is politics, what I do is politics. Everybody's doing the kind of the same thing. And so this is how they subsume these things. They say, well, that thing you're doing, and this is the Gnostic idea, by the way. This is the Gnostic grift, because Gnosticism is a parasite and it latches on to other belief systems, whether it's science, whether it's philosophy, whether it's religion. That's how you end up getting Gnostic Christian cults. It latches on. That's how you get mystical Jewish cults. It latches on, and it uses the language and the garb of those things to promote its esoteric, crazy beliefs. In fact, that's what esoteric means. Esoteric means the hidden meanings. Well, the religion itself has an exoteric meaning.
He is so autistic.
But they know the secret esoteric meaning.
James
That's
is
why
off
they use
on
double
like
language.
an autistic
And so what they
obsession.
do is they say, yeah, you know all about your Christianity or your science of child development or whatever, but you only know as much as they want you to know. We know the real secrets. Come with us. And that's how they suck you in. And again, like I said, this is true across all of woke theory. It's true across socialism under Mao or Lenin or Marx himself. But it's much more tangibly and dangerously true within queer theory, which is the doctrine of a cult called queer. I should call queer Gnosticism, or I am calling queer Gnosticism. Now, this is important. When I say how dangerous it is, let me give you a flavor of this, because if we're talking about initiation, we should have some sense of what initiation rites into sexual-based cults might look like. And so there are reasons to connect this that are not arbitrary to what were known in the pre-Socratic Greek period as the Eleusinian mysteries. They're a little watered down. They're clownified into drag queens and so on, but the Eleusinian mysteries, I think I'm saying that right. Maybe I'm not. This was a cult ritual that was done, and it rendered one a mystai, M-Y-S-T-A-I, a mystai, which is a kind of Gnostic wizard. When you went through the mystery. So you learn the secret mysteries of everything, of life, of how the world really works. And the reason it kind of connects is actually that studying what Hegel called philosophy, which philosophy for him is in fact sorcery. It is in fact Hermeticism. He's quite
philosophy is sorcery? Am I high? I don't think I'm... I feel like... has was James smoking too much weed when he came up with these ideas? Like, I feel like hey, fuck it. I'm gonna get high and listen to I'm absolutely not getting high on the internet. I would never do that. But like, I was gonna drink, but then you hit me with the philosophy is sorcery line. Like, that's it. James is high. I might as well be high. Can we listen to that again?
World really works. And the reason it kind of connects is actually that studying what Hegel called philosophy, which philosophy for him is in fact sorcery. It is in fact Hermeticism. He's quite clear on what he means. Makes you a mystai. But if you look up the word mystai, it directly points you to these mystery cults. These mystery cults, specifically, what rendered you a mystai, a mystic, is having passed through the Eleusinian mysteries, at least in pre-Socratic Greek. And what is the initiation? Well, it's a pagan rite. And what does it do? It celebrates, or allegedly celebrates, the rescue of Demeter from Hades. So Demeter is the daughter of Persephone, is kidnapped and taken to the underworld by Hades and is held there. So there's never going to be spring again. And lo and behold, somebody goes into the underworld and rescues Demeter from Hades. And they strike a deal. They strike a bargain, a 50-50, a dialectical synthesis, if you will. And that Demeter will spend the winter or half the year underground. Right? It's actually, I think, 4 months and 3 months, or 4 months and 8 months is how the deal works. And when she's in Hades, you have winter. And when she gets to come back out, you have spring and summer. And who rescues Demeter from the underworld? Hermes. It's Hermetic. And so this is a rite that celebrates the fertility of spring, the new life returning from death, which is what the underworld's about. And so the rescue of spring and the rescue of new life from death. And of course, fertility. Well, sex has something to do with this. So the rites conveying these mysteries were almost certainly, not that I know for sure, just guessing based on what descriptions I have seen and what things I have read, and knowing a thing or two about the Greeks. These rites were very likely wildly perverse orgies. And the mysteries themselves were almost certainly...
Wait. James is saying that the Gnostics in ancient Greece initiated people into the Gnostic sex cult in ancient Greece because Hermes rescued Persephone from the underworld as a Gnostic ritual of fertility that would bring about spring. And because the Gnostics in ancient Greece were using orgies to ritually initiate everyone into the Gnostic sex cult, that means queer theory is about sexualizing children today. Did I just summarize that correctly? Everyone following? The ancient Greeks had orgies as a fertility ritual, and that means that what is going on in schools today is an ancient Greek ritualistic orgy with children into a Gnostic sex cult led by Oprah. Let's not forget, because when James recorded this, he believed that Oprah was leading all of this. I never want to be called crazy again. I do not like anyone who calls me crazy and thinks that James is sane. I'm sorry. I just...
Sexual mysteries that were rooted in pederasty, that's diddling kids in plain English, and other forms of sexual perversion, often and particularly involving between adults and children. I don't know that for absolute certain about the Eleusinian mysteries, but I do know that this was a thing that was important in some...
James's next book title, I don't know this for absolute certain.
of these higher cultic circles within Greek life. It was a thing. It's discussed throughout Plato if you need to understand, if you can understand what's being written about there.
This is the best comedy I've heard in years.
Adults and children were participating in initiations of this kind, if not specifically the initiations into the Eleusinian mysteries. So the idea is that innocence is going to be removed, initiation into adulthood is brought for the children, and innocence about the world is removed, and initiation into the cult is brought to the new adult participants. And why would the cult have initiation into the... Why would initiation for adults into the cult have to involve something about the correct love of boys? And the reason is because blackmail, more or less. And now we see what Epstein Island might be about.
Oh my.
And so this is more than likely what the deal was. You go through this initiation rite, they tell you the secrets of the world. The higher class people get to have access to the true love of boys, and in the process they get compromat on you so that you now are controlled by the elites in society. They don't let anybody into those elite circles who isn't controlled one way or another. commitment might not even be enough. You need blackmail. And that's a good way to get it because everybody dislikes it. It's in Plato that the people don't like it. The people know it's evil. So anyway, you get initiated into the cult by compromising yourself and proving that you're willing to. And then you get to have the benefits. How do these cults work? Do they really have magic powers? No, they have highly placed people and well-placed people who make things happen. That's how they work. You need something fixed, like say you needed a building permit or whatever, and one of your guys works in City Hall. He doesn't have to actually approve your paperwork. He can just rubber stamp it. But he doesn't do that for anybody else. And now it's like magic is happening. Stuff just works for you. It's a secret of attraction. It's called corruption.
That's a great question.
Of course, the secret or the law of attraction is hermetic, New Age hermetic.
Oh my God!
Goofball stuff.
There it is.
Except it's not.
There it is. The secret, the law of attraction, manifesting. There it is. Did you guys catch that while we were making fun of James? When I listened to this way back when, before joining your community, I legit thought James was going to start with Mulak and Endrochrome harvesting. Yeah, James is like a mainstreaming QAnon bullshit is what he's doing. We need to listen to that again, though, because he just expertly weaved in manifesting and the law of attraction, which is a reference to New Age woo, essentially the stuff that I do. Now, we just learned about manifesting last night. For people who don't know what manifesting is and you think it's some sort of crazy thing, all manifesting means is you create a vision for what you want in your life, and then you act as though you are the person that has already achieved that vision. And in acting as the person who has already achieved that vision, you will bring about that vision into your reality. That's all it is. It's about creating a goal, asking yourself, what kind of person would I be if I achieved that goal? How would I feel if I achieved that goal? How would I carry myself? How would I interact with people? What strategies will I have taken to get to that goal? And then you act like you're the person who has achieved that thing. And when you act like you're the person that has achieved that thing, it tends to make things happen, and then you get closer to your goal. But you have to commit to it, and you have to believe it's real. You have to believe that you are the person who can do the things that are required to achieve that goal. That's all that means. It's not fucking magic. Anyone knows this is true. Like, if you have a job interview, and you go into that job interview thinking, I've already gotten this job. I'm the perfect person for this job. They're going to love me. And then you act like the person who's already gotten the job. You are more likely to get the job than if you go into that interview saying, I'm horrible and I'm really nervous and they're going to hate me and this is awful and I'm never going to get this job. Like, which one do you think is more likely to get the job? The person who's acting like they're a confident person that already has that job, or the person that's moping around saying, I suck, I suck, I suck? This is what we're talking about. That's what manifesting is. It's about being the confident person that already believes they're more than capable and more than worthy of getting the thing that you want. That's all this is. That's what the secret is. That's it. It's not some sort of fucking Gnostic magic. Now let's hear what James has to say about it.
Building permit or whatever, and one of your guys works in City Hall. He doesn't have to actually approve your paperwork. He can just rubber stamp it. But he doesn't do that for anybody else. And now it's like magic is happening. Stuff just works for you.
Yeah.
It's a secret of attraction. It's called corruption. Of course, the secret or the law of attraction is hermetic, New Age hermetic.
No.
Goofball
it's
stuff.
Really not,
Except
James.
it's not. That's how it really
You're right,
works.
it's not.
And so this is even hinted at, though. When I say it's all dirty like this, like, I know that I don't know a ton about the Eleusinian mysteries. I'm confessing that. I'm certain these Dionysian type
I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I assure you that it's probably still real.
sex orgies were occurring. I'm certain that children were involved, certain that Plato knew about it and wrote about it, because it's hinted at in some of the neo-Marxist literature, which is where I ended up starting to look at this. The critical theory literature. I was talking about Max Horkheimer and critical theory a minute ago. Well, now I'm talking about Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse, near the end, it's on page 211 in the kind of standard copy of Herbert Marcuse's 1955 book, Eros and Civilization. Eros is the Greek god of eroticism or love, right? So Eros and Civilization, near the end, he actually alludes to the Platonic discourse on the Symposium. And just as an interesting side note to this, by the way, my personal digital copy, I never talked about this before, I guess last November, because I didn't realize, I didn't know. My digital copy of Eros and Civilization that I got doesn't have the relevant parts of this page. They've been deleted from the digital copy. But it's exactly the same book with the exact same pagination, the exact same page numbers. Otherwise, there's just one page that's shorter in how long it is because it's missing the relevant sentences from the paragraph. So they censored it in the copy, the digital copy that I ended up being able to download. So my copy of Eros and Civilization is missing these parts, but I ended up catching the print copy, and then I found a digital copy that actually has them. So it's very interesting that my copy censors that. But here's what Marcuse writes, to read a paragraph of his from near the end of Eros and Civilization, where he's talking about the lessons the Symposium teaches. He says, still, the Symposium contains the clearest celebration of the sexual origin and substance of the spiritual relations. According to Diotima, Eros drives the desire for one beautiful body to another, and finally to all beautiful bodies. For, quote, the beauty of one body is akin to the beauty of another, end quote. And it would be foolish, quote, not to recognize that the beauty in every body is one and the same, end quote. Can you hear the hermeticism? If you can fall in love with or be sexually attracted to one body or channel your sexual attraction into love for one body, then it can expand and you find beauty in every body. Very removing distinctions, very removing particulars, very hermetic magic.
Thanks,
and he
Bot.
says, out of this truly polymorphous sexuality. So sexual energy gives you the idea that you can love everybody. And if you love everybody, you'll want to be a communist because you love everybody now.
Wait,
right?
what?
Out of this truly
If you love everybody, you want to be a communist. James, are you making the argument that Jesus was a communist? Are you literally going there, James? Have we come completely around the bend? Because the wine moms are not going to like the argument that Jesus is a communist. I just didn't really see that coming.
hermeticism. If you can fall in love with or be sexually attracted to one body or channel your sexual attraction into love for one body, then it can expand and you find beauty in every body. Very removing distinctions, very removing particulars, very hermetic magic. And he says, out of this truly polymorphic...
Bot, I think I like the original map better. Let me show you guys. Bot made another map. We need to have a vote on which map we like better. Vote for whichever you want. I need to get it up in the DMs. Hang on. This is critically important. We need to take a break from James's nonsense and look at something that matters, which is a map of Retardia. Okay, let me get it downloaded. I think this map looks good, Bot. I'm not shitting on the map. I'm just saying that I think... I'll explain why I like the first one better, and then we're going to take a poll. Okay? I will give this map a fair shake. Okay. Alright. So, the new map of Retardia, or the alternate... I'm going to call it the alternate map of Retardia. Yeah, we're only 30 minutes into this. There's another 3 hours left of this. This is the new map being proposed by Bot. Oh, you need to fix something? Okay. And so it's got all the basics. It's got the Gnostic sex cult over here. It's got the Woods of Retardia. It's got the home of Kissin the Deluded. It's got King James Lindsay the First. And so this is comparing with the original map of Retardia, which the quality on this one is not as great, but you can still get an idea of what it is. I don't know. I like the original. I'm going to explain why. First off, I think the original looks more authentic. It looks more like a map that I would have expected. Like, it's just not as, like, it's not as well polished. And I feel like this one is a little bit more of, like, a Renaissance map. Where it's a little bit too clean to me. I also think that Kissin the Deluded shouldn't be living in a castle. Kissin the Deluded should probably be living in a cave. Here's what we should do. Like on this map, you should probably put Kissin the Deluded over here. You should put King James Lindsay in this castle, and then move the Gnostic sex cult over to a clearing by the woods. I would say, yeah, well, yeah, but this is another point that I want to make. Like, I kind of like that the first map looks like Australia. But we could have both maps. We could just have the map from different perspectives. We could do both. I mean, who's saying we just have to have one map? I kind of like the original map looking like Australia, though. You just can't buy that. Hey, we've got a new person. Welcome, new person. I listened to Marxist 101 and Marxist Utopia. Yep, I know James Lindsay's stuff doesn't square with the little I learned. Hey, stick around. We're shitting on James today. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't watched my Queer Marxism and Abolish the Family content, I have a whole bunch of it on my channel. I would highly recommend you watch it. Pay particular attention to the episodes we did with Sophie Lewis and Emmy O'Brien for Abolish the Family content. You can just search Queer Marxism or Abolish the Family on my channel. You'll get a whole bunch of stuff that comes right up. And that's going to be real queer Marxist activists that will show you what they're actually doing in the real world, so you know just how much bullshit James is trying to sling right now. Yeah. So, but I do like this. Like, I do like this map, and I feel like maybe this could be just a zoomed in version of the map. I just want this. I want the locations to be different. So, bot again. Here's what I would like. I like the Woods of Retardia can stay. The Retardia School of Gnosticism, or I mean, hang on. Here's a question: should the school be bigger than the castle? That will be the home. Like, should King James Lindsay live in the castle? And then the Retardia School of Gnosticism and Wizardry is this littler castle. And then we move the Gnostic sex cult over to the clearing by the ocean, which I think would be better anyway. I think I just like to think of it as like a different perspective of the land of Retardia. It's just a different perspective. It's just zoomed in. Yeah, I think the school for Gnosticism and Wizardry, which should be the littler castle. I think King James Lindsay I should be the bigger castle, and the Gnostic sex cult should come over here, and that way Kissin the Deluded can go over to where the Gnostic sex cult is. The woods can remain the same. I like that idea. But I like this map better because it's Australia. All right. Good work, guys. Team. See, this is why we're able to create way more cool stuff than James is. Because not only are we smarter, not only do we understand queer theory better than James does, we're also more creative.
Sexuality. So sexual energy gives you the idea that you can love everybody. And if you love everybody, you want to be a communist. Because you love everybody now, right? Out of this truly polymorphous sexuality arises the desire for that which animates the desired body, the psyche and its various manifestations. There is an unbroken ascent in erotic fulfillment from the corporeal love of one to that of the others. Do you see this? So he's saying when you get hot and bothered, when you get horny for somebody, when it's horny time, and you seek erotic fulfillment through corporeal bodily love of one,
sex.
That leads to the other forms of love. So if you get hot and bothered for somebody, you'll fall in love with them. And if you fall in love with them, that makes you love everything. And all the other types of love, the Greeks identified 5, follow from it. But he lists 3.
That's not what that means.
So there's an unbroken ascent. So these are in order. They increase in their spiritual significance. And the erotic fulfillment from the corporeal love of one, the eros, the erotic desire for one that turns into physical consummation, to that of the others, the other loves, to the love of beautiful work and play. Epithedumata, or there's no way I'm going to say these Greek things right. Just deal with me. And ultimately to the love of beautiful knowledge. Kala Mathematica, or Mathematica. No, I added a C. Kala Mathemata. Sorry. I went straight into Mathematica from my old computer math days. So if you get hot and bothered for somebody and you consummate it and you fall in love with them, that leads you to love your life and beautiful work and play within your life. And then that leads to loving beautiful knowledge and truth. See, so it all starts.
You know what? This is just like watching socialism because like, and maybe this is just a new entertaining road we can go down because I feel I've got the socialists pretty figured out at this point. And like, part of why I got so obsessed with watching socialism in the first place was because it was so crazy. Do you guys remember those the old heads? Do you guys remember the old days when we first started watching socialism? And it was like we wanted to watch as much socialism as we possibly could because it was just they were saying crazy thing after crazy thing, and we were like, and we were like, what are they going to say next? Like, what's more crazy than the other crazy things that we've already heard? And then we just kept hearing crazy thing after crazy thing. But eventually, we started to understand the socialists so well. Like it takes a lot to shock us nowadays. It's like new people come to Socialism Saturday and they're having that same kind of like initiating experience where they're like, this is crazy. And all of us are just like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. But it doesn't surprise us anymore because we've heard it over and over again. I feel like this podcast with James I feel like I felt when I first started watching socialism where I'm like, what crazy thing is he going to say next? Is it going to get worse? This is fucking hilarious. Where has this been? It's like James is like the new socialist.
Starts with horny time. And next thing you know, you love beautiful knowledge. Kala Mathemata. And then he goes on. He says, the road to, quote, higher culture leads through the true love of boys. And what he says, the Greek he gives is orthos pederastin. Correct pederasty. Orthos pederastin. There is no ambiguity in what's meant there. The true love of boys. Orthos, like orthotics, I guess. It's correct, right? Orthogonal. It means right, correct. Orthodox, orthos, correct doctrine, orthodox, right? Orthos, pederastin, correct pederasty.
What the fuck is he talking
The road
about?
to higher culture leads through the true love of boys. Literally correct pederasty from the Greek. That's what he says the lesson of symposium, the clearest celebration of the sexual origin and substance of the spiritual relations is. Spiritual, quote, procreation, he says, is just as much the work of Eros as is corporeal procreation. So now we're going to have spiritual procreation as a result of this, right? And the right and true order of the polis, of the city, of the society, of civilization, Eros and civilization. He's telling you, by the way, the key to how to read this entire book as a coded document. Eros and civilization is built off of this idea.
I want everyone to notice that James has not said the word capitalism once in this entire podcast.
The right and true order of the polis is just as much an erotic one as the right and true order of love. The culture-building power of Eros is non-repressive sublimation. Sexuality is neither deflected from nor blocked in its objective. Rather, in attaining its objective, it transcends it to others, searching for fuller gratification. So that's pretty sick. So that's actually pointing right in the direction of queer theory, and you also see that it ties directly into this idea of these pre-Socratic sex cults. Now, Drag Queen Story Hour, which sells itself directly into our schools and is applauded by...
As a reminder, the goal of Drag Queen Story Hour is to teach kids that gender is a performance with the explicit goal of abolishing the gender binary, which they believe was created by capitalism. If they can teach kids that gender is a performance and that changing your gender is as easy as changing an outfit, that will lead to the eventual abolition of the gender binary, which is what queer really wants, because queer wants to abolish capitalism. And if they abolish the gender binary, they will abolish the nuclear family. And if they convince a certain amount of the population that they are gender queer, gender fluid, gender non-binary literally means no binary. It is always a reference to the gender binary, not this innocent indoctrination binary that James seems to be talking about. That's what Drag Queen Story Hour is about. It's about teaching kids that gender is a performance that you can change as easy as changing your outfit. And isn't it fun to be in the sparkly outfit with all the sparkles and the flounce and all that stuff? It's much more fun to change your gender than it is to stay your normal, boring gender. And therefore, you are gender fluid, which means the gender binary doesn't exist, which means men and women are just a social construct that was created by capitalism to keep men in the workplace in all the positions of power with all the money, where the women stayed in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers. The reason they advocate for reproductive justice, which is abortion on demand, is to liberate women from the gender binary where they are forced into the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the children that will become the next group of oppressed workers under capitalism via social reproduction theory, which social reproduction theory states that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted, which means that the nuclear family is literally the means of reproduction of capitalism. And that is the point of all of this, because queer theory's goal is to abolish capitalism. It is not a reenactment of some ancient Greek orgy-driven sex cult. The goal is to abolish capitalism. That is the only goal. That is the explicit goal. And James doesn't even say capitalism in this entire fucking podcast. I'm going to make a clip of that later.
By Democratic politicians all over the country. They brag about going to these things on their social media. They encourage these things in their districts. Is, in its own words, quote, a preparatory introduction to alternate modes of kinship.
That means abolish the
is
family. Alternate modes of kinship means the alternative to the nuclear family, because they need to abolish the nuclear family in order to abolish capitalism. Because they believe that the nuclear family reproduces capitalism via social reproduction theory. So they have to present an alternative to the nuclear family that is an alternative to biological kinship, which exists in the nuclear family. Because if there are no alternative modes of kinship, another name for this might be family of choice, then they have no other option for the nuclear family. They have to give people some other system to go to. This is why they're doing polyamory. Polyamory means alternate modes of kinship. This is why they have merchandise at Target that says family of choice and then it has a bunch of queer people in the background. It's pushing the idea of abolish the family. And the specific goal of abolishing the family is to abolish capitalism. They call the family the privatized capitalist family, or the Fordist family. We heard it called the Fordist family the other day. Ford being a reference to the Industrial Revolution, which is a reference to capitalism. I don't know why this is so unclear. Leftists talk about this openly in their trainings, and I have hundreds of hours of those trainings documented on this channel, which James has never bothered to watch.
A preparatory introduction
No,
that
he
instructs in,
should.
quote, living queerly as such.
Living queerly
In other words,
means,
Drag Queen Story
oh my
Hour, which
fucking
is in
God.
our schools
Living queerly means living outside of capitalism.
and predating on our children and celebrated by Democratic politicians all over the country is this cult initiation 2022
No.
and 3 style.
Oh my
Actually,
fucking
2015
God.
to present style. That's when it started.
No!
Drag Queen Story Hour is this initiation process into this erotic structure of the polis that Marcuse is talking about. It's just taking on what Marcuse called in the essay on liberation in 1969, the clownish forms that irritate the
No.
establishment. It's
Mm-mm.
Eros doing drag. It's Eros being a clown.
Someone's a clown.
And it's profoundly informed by queer pedagogy, like we said. In fact, it's published as a piece of queer pedagogy, queer educational theory. And that's rooted in queer theory, which I assert is the cult doctrine for which this practice is the initiation pathway, or one initiation pathway.
My God. James is saying that Drag Queen Story Hour is akin to an ancient Greek ritual of initiating people into a Gnostic cult by having sex with young boys. Do you want to know why no one takes conservatives seriously? Because if a normal person goes to a Drag Queen Story Hour, and you might not like Drag Queen Story Hour, and that's fine, and I don't like Drag Queen Story Hour either, but I don't like it for very different reasons. But let's just take your average normie. Your average normie that doesn't know about any of this stuff. And they're like, what is all the hullabaloo over the drag queen story hour? And they're like, all these people are screaming about how Drag Queen Story Hour is a Gnostic cult that's grooming children and initiating them into sex. What the fuck is going on? And then they're like, I'm going to go and investigate it for myself, because that's actually what responsible people do. That's what responsible people do. If they have a question about something, they go look at the thing themselves. So then this normie person who's like seeing the right talk about all this crazy stuff, and they're not necessarily bought into the idea of kids hearing stories from drag queens, but they're like, they're running a sex cult out of the library. And so then they decide to go and do their own research, and they go to the Drag Queen Story Hour. And do you know what they see at the Drag Queen Story Hour? They see a drag queen that is almost universally actually dressed appropriately. What I mean by that is there's no nudity. I'm not saying like it is a man dressed up as a woman, that's true, but they're not doing anything overtly sexual. They're not showing any body parts they shouldn't be. Like, they're dressed in an outfit that is appropriate. I mean, you can say whether or not drag is appropriate, but there is a difference between an outfit that has nudity and an outfit that doesn't, okay? And they see this person dressed up as a drag queen and all those sparkles and glamour and all that shit. And they see a bunch of kids that are sitting around the person. And that person is reading the kids a story. And that story is usually perfectly fine and doesn't have anything to do with sex at all. And then you've got this normie person going and saying, you know, this is kind of weird. Like, it's a drag queen reading stories to kids, but like, there's no sex cult here. They're not even talking about sex. And then the normie's like, holy shit, conservatives are crazy. Conservatives think this is a sex cult? What the fuck? And then their conservative neighbor comes up and is like, no, you don't understand. It's a Gnostic sex cult. They're having sex with young boys. Do you guys understand why this looks crazy? Do you guys understand why to normal people, and the vast majority of people in the country are normal people. They're not hinged into all of this stuff. They're not on the cutting edge of news. They don't know what's going on. They're just normal people with families that go to work, and then they come home, and then they flip on mainstream media, or maybe they watch a game or something like that, and then they go to sleep, and then they get up the next day to do it all over again, and they don't care about any of this shit. Normal people aren't as in tune with what's going on as we are. And they're seeing conservatives go, no, it's a Gnostic cult. They're trying to sexualize your kids. They're putting them through an ancient Greek initiation ritual into the Gnostic. And then they're seeing the left go, we just want everyone to be nice to each other, and we thought this would be a way for people to be nice to each other, and, you know, it's just a person in a dress reading a story, and there's nothing really bad going on, and, you know, we don't understand what all the fuss is about. Like, they're crazy. They think this is some sort of Gnostic sex cult. Like, this is like, we're not doing anything wrong. You can come and see for yourself. Are these kids being sexualized? They're all sitting on the floor reading a story. That's what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. And this is why people think the right is insane when it comes to talking about indoctrination in schools. Because they act like fucking lunatics. Yeah. The rant you did would send the average person into glazed eyes thinking, oh my god, this person is insane, because it front loads info, but once they saw the backup clips might sway them. But if they see the backup clips that I have, yeah, the ones that I have, then it does sway them. But like, my evidence doesn't talk about any sort of Gnostic fucking sex cult. My evidence says queer theory wants to abolish the gender binary as an attack on the nuclear family, and I have them saying it on video. Which means that James is pushing people away from finding out what is really going on, because it is so insane. And it is so unhinged from reality. There's still 3 more hours of this podcast. We're obviously not going to listen to the whole thing. At least not today.
The stuff we see in entertainment also is another. The scary people we see on the internet and social media is another. Frankly, Dylan Mulvaney having a big
Yeah, Trump's
platform now
lying.
that he
I don't believe him.
transitioned or whatever is another. We also know, again, referring back to groomer schools too, like I said, that overcoming childhood innocence through such a preparatory introductions, as they call them, that is, initiations, as other queer theorists, like we'll talk about by the end, Eve Kosofsky, Sedgwick in particular, they make this abundantly clear. Overcoming childhood innocence through such preparatory introductions or initiations is so important that the entire fields of early childhood education and childhood developmental psychology have to be queered in order to facilitate it. They have to be brought into line with the cult doctrine of queer Gnosticism because they would otherwise reject it, throw it in a lake of fire, and they would do so with incredible force. This wouldn't be happening.
Does
The legal
James
consequences
hear
would be
himself?
enormous. This would be slapped down by law enforcement. This would be shut down by judges, the court orders. People that are implementing it would be going to jail for child abuse, for negligent harm, deliberate harm, sexual, all kinds of crimes.
Oh my God.
But they've brought this other stuff under the cult view of queer theory. Queer Gnosticism is now infecting the thoughts of our judges, of our law enforcement, of our politicians, of our lawmakers. And they don't want to be homophobic or contribute to transphobia or any of these kinds of things. Because everybody knows, just like back in Plato's day, that this is not good, that this is not okay. It is actually rooted in everything, literally everything, moral good, reasonable, evidentiary, sensible, etc. And so you have to queer those things so that they can have fake experts coming out and pontificating and confusing with their cult doctrine so that they can advance and continue their cult initiations, which involve using our children. But lest you think I'm overstating this, I'll put it in their own words from the Drag Queen Story Hour paper just to remind you. In this article, we explore the pedagogical contributions of a program called Drag Queen Story Hour as a form of queer imagining in an early childhood context.
Yep,
These are the first sentences,
true.
by the way, of the paper. This is the abstract. This is their own summary of it. Through this program, drag artists have channeled their penchant. Sorry, this is the first paragraph. It's not the abstract. Through this program, drag artists have channeled their penchant for playfully, quote, reading each other into filth. That's a pun, but it's also very obviously that they are reading you into filth. They are initiating into filth, right? It's clearly an initiation into a worldview. Drag artists have channeled their penchant for playfully reading each other into filth into different forms of literacy, promoting storytelling as integral to queer and trans communities, as well as positioning queer and trans cultural forms as valuable components of early childhood education. See, that's them queering early childhood education.
Yes.
They're trying to make it seem like experts
Correct.
believe and agree that these things, these queer and trans cultural forms, are valuable components of early childhood education. That's so that the experts, when they show up to court, will confuse and befuddle the judges who would normally be shutting this down with tremendous prejudice. We are guided by the following question, they tell us. What, and this is all in italics, the whole question, it's in italics, what might Drag Queen Story Hour offer educators as a way of bringing queer ways of knowing and being into the education of young children? They then go on to say, ultimately, the authors propose that drag pedagogy, which is what they call what they're doing, provides a performative approach to queer pedagogy that is not simply about LGBT lives. In fact, it's barely about them at all. It uses them, but it's not.
It's not about LGBT lives. You don't say, because queer is different from trans. Queer is not about being gay. Queer is not about being trans. You do not need to be gay or queer or gay or trans to be queer. Queer is a far left political ideology that is designed to abolish the gender binary and abolish the nuclear family.
About them, but all in italics again, living queerly. So you're introducing children into an entirely new way of living.
Outside of capitalism.
That way is queerly living. And Drag Queen Story Hour is a preparatory introduction to that.
Right.
Because it's a cult initiation.
No, because it's about
more
abolishing
specifically
the gender binary.
On initiation, they say, we believe that Drag Queen Story Hours, this is the words that they use, we believe that Drag Queen Story Hour offers an invitation toward deeper public engagement with queer cultural production,
That means
particularly for young
anti-capitalist.
children and their families.
That means
It may be that
anti-capitalist,
Drag
you
Queen Story Hour
retard.
is, quote, family-friendly in the sense that it is accessible and inviting to families with children, but it is less a sanitizing force than it is a preparatory introduction to alternate modes of kinship.
That means
Here,
abolishing
Drag
the
Queen
nuclear.
Story
That means abolishing the nuclear family in order to the alternative modes of kinship is an alternative form to the nuclear family.
Hour is, quote, family-friendly in the sense of, quote, family, as an old-school queer code to identify and connect with other queers on the street.
That means anti-capitalist. Family of choice. It does not mean a Gnostic cult.
So, as I said, they're using coded language. That's a cult tactic to say one thing
It is coded, James, but you don't understand what the code is.
and mean another, so that they can set up an opportunity for a preparatory introduction, which is an initiation that overcomes childhood innocence, because initiation and innocence are in a binary, intentioned opposition with one another under queer theory that has to be resolved. And they're doing that with your children and calling it family-friendly to trick you.
God.
That's what's going on. It's a cult initiation. So thusly introduced. We've only got through the introduction. Let me make the big, we haven't even done the big picture case yet that I said I was going to start with. That's the introduction. Let me make the big picture case now that queer theory is queer Gnosticism, and then we're going to turn around and look at how the theorists make this identification go very deep. I'm going to try to be somewhat quick with this part, though. It's not superficial, though. It's very deep, as you're going to hear. It's not like, queer theory is not like a Gnostic cult, into whatever they mean by the word queerness.
Has anyone actually listened to this that is shilling James's bullshit? There are people, guys, there are people that believe this. No one on the right actually listens to the left. None of them.
Which we'll discuss. It is a Gnostic cult, where the gnosis means knowing what it means to be and live queerly. I guess be queer and live queerly is grammatically correct. So queer theory is queer Gnosticism. Technically, it's queer Marxism, but Marxism is a peculiar form of Gnosticism. In fact, it's modern Gnosticism. Queer theory takes it postmodern, so it's really a form of postmodern Gnosticism. The basic idea of queer theory as a Marxist theory is that there are certain people who get to call themselves normal. They get to define what it means to be normal, especially with regard to sex and sexuality. Also gender. They get to define the terms of normal sex, gender, sexuality, sometimes fat, ability, etc. draw off of this and other things. Okay? So there's a peculiar kind of cultural property that certain people have access to for reasons that don't seem clear, that they're granting themselves access to. Then they created, it's called normalcy, being normal.
No, it means normativity, James.
Then create
it's called normativity.
A definition of normal that means themselves, so that they can gatekeep other people out of it. So that creates a two-tiered society of the normals and the abnormals.
No. The normals are a reference to normativity. Normativity means anything that upholds capitalism. That's what that means. If you are living a queer lifestyle, that is an anti-capitalist lifestyle. That means you are rejecting norms that uphold capitalism. The norms you are rejecting specifically when it comes to queer are, among other things, the gender binary, which is why they all go by they, them, or she, they, or he, they, because they're rejecting the binary. You also reject the nuclear family as a privatized form You prefer alternative modes of kinship, families of choice, polyamory, all these things that keep you outside of a monogamous relationship within the nuclear family. You may also do sex work to get yourself outside of the capitalist system. There are a lot of queer people who do sex work because sex work is one of the things that does not uphold the capitalist norms. It's outside the system. You probably have you don't have a corporate job, I'll tell you that. I don't know how this is difficult to understand. This is I cannot emphasize this enough for people who might not have watched my content before. When you listen to actual queer Marxists, every single thing that I'm saying is it's like entry level. It's not even that, you don't even have to dig deep to find it. And the fact, again, that James doesn't know this, or that James is pretending not to know it because he wants to advance some absurd spiritualist conspiracy, it really blows my mind. It is almost unbelievable.
The normals are the ones who have the cultural power. The
No.
normals are the one who get to decide what
Capitalists.
counts as normal, and they use that to fence out and exclude the people they call abnormal. That sets up a conflict in society, a stratification and conflict in society. And so the people excluded from that have the opportunity to awaken to a queer consciousness of what it means to be excluded by being considered abnormal. This is the same as the proletariat gets to be have the opportunity of being awakened by what it means to be exploited as a worker and alienated from.
Guys, do you remember? This is separate from this podcast. Do you guys remember, like 3 years ago, when I pissed off all of the neo-Nazis, like the real ones, not the Groypers. This is separate from the Groypers. Like the real neo-Nazis, like I pissed them off by saying that CRT is an anti-white, and they were in their feelings about it for fucking months. And some of them called into my show, and there was one particularly toxic fucking neo-Nazi that was like wearing the cowboy hat. He just retweeted me on Twitter with a clip of him calling in. So he's now identified himself to me on Twitter. And he looks exactly how you think he looks. And he works for a like neo-Nazi network of some sort. Who the fuck is this guy? A lot of the Groypers follow him. That concerns me if I'm honest about it. Because this guy is toxic. He was toxic then, he's toxic now. You want to see him? Okay, let me see. Hang on. You want to see him? By the way, I'm still correct about CRT not being anti-white. I hope people understand that. I hope people understand that. They probably don't. Someone's got to tell me who this asshole is. Because I'm going to block him after this, but like... Here, I'll even show you the clip for people who weren't around back then. Let's see. It might be my notifications. Okay, right here, this one. View post engagements. This one. Merely 3 years ago, I humored you with a debate when you were using your platform to argue against nationalism. No, bro, I'm still using my platform to argue against you, and I'm using my platform absolutely to educate as many people as possible that you assholes are lying about what this is. And that doesn't change because I'm friendly with Nick and the Groypers now, by the way. Because we are talking about two completely different things, and most of the Groypers are actually smart enough to understand that. We're not talking about the same thing. Retards like this guy will never be smart enough to understand this. Now that you have conveniently converted to our side, I'm not on your side, asshole. I am not on your side in any way, shape, or form. And no, I am absolutely not going to show humility to assholes like you. It will never happen. You're still just as stupid and just as toxic as I found you 3 years ago. That obviously hasn't changed. You guys want to see this clip? Actually, I don't know if I want to watch this. This guy's so creepy, though. Just a minute of it, maybe.
Press you on your moral stance.
I want you to know, too, wrong answer. And when I look at for any... Hang on. We're going to fast forward. That has been...
And there's no...
There he is.
Understand where you're coming from, but I do think there is an element of cowardice to this, because you had a caller call in saying that white people had to pay $20 to go to a pride parade. You yourself admit that there are people openly saying they want to hire white men. And there's no other way to put that other than it is anti-white.
Well, no, because it is much more complicated than that. I could also point to True. what they did to Senator Tim Scott when he got up and said America is not a racist country, and they vilified him and called him Uncle Tim on Twitter. Like, I mean, there are just as many instances, excuse me, I'm talking. There are just as many instances that I can point out of racism against African Americans that have spoken out about this. There's just as many instances that I can point out of misogyny against women who have spoken out against this. There's just as many that I can point out against Asians that have spoken. I work with Chinese American groups that are fighting back against this. They get this backlash too. And I think that we are on the same page in terms of we don't want this shit to happen. But I do not believe that framing it in terms of anti-white is going to get the outcome that Still you true. want. It's going to create
Still
100% on that, by the way. That is not going to be controllable. And so I understand your frustration. Still true. It's going to spiral out of control in the same way that critical race theory has spiraled out of control. Like, if we're framing this in an anti-white context, all you're doing is creating critical race theory on the right. That's actually critical race theory already exists on the left. Do you want to create the same thing on the right? Because it's exactly the same thing. And by the way, just so we're extremely clear, just because I'm friendly with Nick and the Groypers doesn't mean I actually buy into like a lot of the race stuff. It really doesn't. So I agree with them on how feckless Conservative Inc. is. I agree with them on the Jewish stuff. There is overlap between the Jewish stuff and the race stuff that I'm not going to get into while I'm streaming on YouTube, and that is true. However, there are also elements of the race stuff that I don't like, that I don't agree with, and particularly when it comes to guys like this, who are exactly the type of person that you think they are. I am not. I have spent the last several days listening to actual fucking neo-Nazis in Twitter spaces that are fighting with the Groypers, because right now, by the way, I don't know that people know this, like, the Groypers don't actually usually tend to like these people. So like, and they've been in a war with actual like neo-Nazis like for days, and they've been saying, like, the neo-Nazis are like, why won't you work with us? And the Groypers are like, fuck you, we hate you guys. Like, so it is a completely kind of like it is really separate. But I've been listening to a lot of their spaces, and it is the most downright toxic, low IQ, just people that you never, ever, 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 ever want to be around. So this guy can posture on Twitter and say, like, you can immediately come over to our side. No, I haven't, bro. No. Not on this stuff. And I have laid out the reasons for it countless times. I'm not going to do it here again. But I just want to be very clear about that, because there are absolutely disagreements that I have. And this is one of the areas that I really do not like. And critical race theory has spiraled out of control on the left, and we're trying to rein it back in now. If something spirals out of control on the right, we aren't going to have that opportunity. So I'm going to give you one more question, and then we're going to move on.
It seems to me that you're more afraid of the right-wing backlash than you are of critical race theory itself. And to your point where you said we wouldn't have that.
Well, I mean, it's funny he says that, isn't it? Because like now, yes, this guy threatened me. We're going to get to the threat he made in a second. Yeah, he did. Now I understand that the right is just fucking feckless to stop any of it, and that includes all of these fucking assholes. You know, I've been listening to these, I'm sorry to go on a separate rant here. I've been listening to these assholes for days in these Twitter spaces talking about how men are going to fix the world and they're going to end white power and all this bullshit. None of these assholes have stopped any of this. No one on the right has stopped any of it. It's only gotten worse. And so do I think the white men are going to be able to save the world and blah, 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 blah? No. So in that respect, I am actually significantly less afraid of all of this than I was 3 years ago, because I have a much more advanced understanding of it now than I did then. And here's what I know now. The left is winning. They are going to win. There's nothing that's going to stop them from winning, because the right, including all of these assholes on the dissident right, they like to act like they're the big men that are going to save us all. They haven't done shit. They haven't done anything to stop this. And they never will do anything to stop this. The only hope that we maybe have is Nick Fuentes and the Groypers doing their pragmatic strategy of infiltrating and taking over the Republican Party. That's it. They are the only hope that actually exists. And I don't even know if they're going to be able to do it, because I don't know if they have I don't know if we have the time. I don't know if the time exists for them to do it. But guys like this, they haven't done anything. They've only made the situation worse.
That opportunity to control it from the right side. What do you exactly mean by that? What are you afraid of?
I am equally afraid of both things, because both things are exactly the same. I'm equally afraid of both. They're both exactly the same. No, I'm not. Critical race theory has now spiraled beyond what the left can control, and the same. Now I know the left is going to win, and I didn't know that then. And I'm glad. Hope you don't. Where did he threaten me? He definitely threatened me. Where did he threaten me? Hang on. Where did he threaten me? He may have threatened me earlier. I definitely need to find the threat.
Hey, Doctor, how's it going?
Maybe the threat was earlier in the video.
Hey, I just want to call in and give my input on my experience with critical race theory in college.
Okay.
And if you look behind me, you'll see portraits of all my ancestors going back over 150 years. My family came from Spain, and they've been in what is now America since the mid-1500s. And I'm very proud of where I came from. All the people who got me to where I am here today. But when I was in college, I was told that all my ancestors were evil. They were colonizers, they were oppressors, and I was told that my ancestors had a...
That meant they owned private property. That didn't mean that they had white skin. It meant that they owned private property, you moron.
Unique guilt. And the stain of racism is upon me.
Bullshit.
And I just wanted to say to you, my generation, I'm 22 years old, and there truly is a visceral feeling of being targeted because we are white. And I just want you to know from my experience that it is a very palpable feeling. And I think you're turning a lot of people off by coming out so strongly against it, even though, you know, I know you had a troll call in and press you on your moral stance or amoral stance. I just want to say this. You've had a lot of trolls call in, and there isn't a block button in real life.
There's the threat.
And I know many men in my generation are pro-white, and there is definitely a backlash coming to this anti-white agenda. So how will you react when you are speaking in person? And you know, we are everywhere. We are numerous. What will you do when we hound you?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you're making threats to me on the internet with your face fully visible, and that might not be the smartest thing you've ever done. But I will say, so he is exactly who I said he is, and I don't even really care if he's from. I don't even care if he's a Groyper. I don't even care. Like, fuck this asshole. Honestly. Oh shit, he is. He was at AFPAC. Well, fuck him. I don't care. I don't have to like all the Groypers, and I don't like him. And he has really toxic energy, and no. No. And if he's not any smarter today than he was 3 years ago, you know what? Listen, man, I really do like a lot of the Groypers. A lot of the Groypers are very, very sweet. They're kind. They're good people. They may be a little bit rambunctious on Twitter. I understand that, and that's fine. They're young men. They are allowed to be young men. But this asshole can suck every single dick. I want nothing to do with him. And goodbye. Bing. Look at that. Look at that. Now I never have to hear from him again. Never have to hear from him again. Oh, should we listen to more James? I think I'm kind of done. Can we be done with James for today? Can we be done with James? Can we stop? I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop and I'm going to go do some writing. God. You know, there is a lot that the dissident right is correct about. There is a lot. And I feel like oftentimes, like, the assholes make it impossible to have a conversation with the non-assholes that are actually correct about some things. And I think it's a shame, man. I really do. I think it's a shame that people like Ryan made it impossible for me to actually listen to people 3 years ago. Made it impossible. You're coming on my channel and fucking threatening me because I didn't say the things you wanted me to say. How are you any better than anyone who comes after you? The answer is you're not. And I think it's too bad when the assholes make it impossible for people to actually have intelligent, rational conversations. Because again, there are so many people on the dissident right that are not hateful, that are not toxic, that are not going to threaten you for saying things they don't like. There's so many, and they may just ignore you, and they might, you know, write a mean post on Twitter or something, but it's like, at their core, they're actually good people, and they're nice people, and they're kind people. And I wish more people could see that, honestly. I have so much fun with so many of the Groypers. I love being in the Groyper spaces. And even like a lot of them, they really don't care if we disagree or not. They really don't care. And as long as you treat them with respect and you hear them out and you don't attack them for no reason, like, they're cool. And we might have different ideas about some things, but it's okay. Because the big picture stuff, we're actually kind of on the same page on. But it's just like, one of the things I really do not like about the dissident right is you keep running into these guys that, like, if I interact with them, if I talk to them, it makes me want to take a shower afterwards because of how dirty I feel, because of how icky I feel. And I wish there was a way to better filter that out. But I guess beggars can't be choosers. It is just a shame, though. It's a shame that the bad apples drive so many people away. It's a shame that the bad apples make it impossible for people to exist in that space. But they do. They do. Luckily, I have enough friends now in that space where I feel okay about it. And I know that not all the Groypers like all the other Groypers. Not all the people like everyone else. I have more context now than I did back then. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up because I'm going to go do some writing. And I might be doing a Twitter space later with my friend Siggy. And we're going to be talking about inspiration and stuff like that. But it really depends on when Nick goes live, because we're not going to do, like, he lives in California. And so he's on a different time schedule than me. And so we might do it tonight if Nick goes live earlier. We may do it another night if he doesn't go live earlier. It just really depends, because we can't do the Twitter space over when Nick is doing his show. And so if you want to come to the Twitter space tonight, just keep an eye on my Twitter, Dr. Karlyn B. And yeah, that's all we got for right now, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for laughing with me at James. I appreciate it. We'll maybe do Antifa tomorrow. We'll maybe do something else. We'll have to see. Thank you, Dragon Balls. No more James. Go right. Yes. Yes. Siggy is fun. Siggy is fun. Siggy posts videos of himself peeing on the timeline. Everyone likes Siggy. He's our friend. All right. That's it. I mean, you could ask to be unblocked. You could ask very nicely to depends on what you did, but you could ask to be unblocked. Anyway, that's all I got for right now, guys. We'll see you soon.